We'll get the recording set up, get the screen share set up. This one, I think. Get this. Maybe it's not that one.
N1CI, is there a chance you could mute because you've got a background noise on your mic? Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me then?
Okay. This one.
Heard you very faint.
Having a little bit of hardware issues. I'll check in as I figure it out.
Got to get stuff moved out of the way. Oh, come on. Okay. Okay. Does everybody see a slide that says Zane Grey Highline Trail runs on it? Online?
Yep, it's there.
Great, thanks. Okay, well, so this month I didn't find a presenter to come and talk with us about a subject, and so I thought I would fill in and talk a little bit about the Zane Grey Highline Trail Run, which typically it's usually the last event of the season in April for MCECG, the Maricopa County Emergency Communications Group, and sometimes it ties with Pat's run on the same day. I don't think it did this year, but in any event, it's a foot race, and they've added a marathon to it. So originally it started out as a 50-mile foot race across the base of the Mogollon Rim, and they would start in Pine and go all the way across to the east and end at the 260 trailhead. And over the years, due to fires and areas getting washed out because of the fire, no vegetation holding the dirt in place, the course has changed and moved and morphed. And today the course is run on the eastern half of the Mogollon Rim. And it does a loop back, and so it's quite a bit physically shorter, but it's still the 50-mile race, and they've added a 27-mile marathon to it for those that want to come out and participate but don't want to endure the full 50-mile effect. And so I wanted to talk about some of the more interesting aspects of what we've been trying to do the last few years to improve our ability to communicate across the course. And those of you that may know or have been in the Mogollon Rim area around Payson and headed up towards Forest Lakes on top, you're familiar with all the jagged cliffs and the steep ascents and descents in that area. Lots of little gullies and crevices, lots of difficult terrain to try and communicate in. And if we go to, let's see, the next slide. So this is just an overview of the entire trail from Pine all the way across to the 260. And as I had mentioned earlier, the due to fires and so forth, this area just past Washington Park was damaged one year took us out for a couple of years or more, washouts and so forth. I think that's now open again. Other years, there's been other fires up in the Milk Ranch Point area. But so the course has changed quite a bit. The trail is still there. The Zane Grey Trail still goes along this path for the most part. Little kinks and bends in the trail have all changed due to these fires. But in general, it follows the base of the rim and makes its way across fish hatcheries up here, Horton Creek down in this area, runs right up through here to where it starts at the headwater. Sea Canyon, you might be familiar with that. Promontory Butte, it's a huge peninsula that sticks out from the face of the rim. And then way over here, you got 260, and then you finally make that last little bit to get on top of the rim for Woods Canyon Lake. So it's a popular trail area. Lots of runners like to go out there and run, and we support this event each year. Whoops, back up one. So this is just an overview on a topo map to give us some depth and to outline where the trail is and where we ended up placing folks. But what I wanted to talk about was how we communicate across this large area and how we try to make it so that you could use a handheld if that's all you had. And so today there seems to be more and more hams that only have a handheld. And when we used to run this event years and years ago, pre-COVID, we told everybody you have to have a mobile radio, you have to have a mast and an antenna, and bring your A game, bring your best equipment, and expect to run, maximum power to be able to talk between the repeaters and everybody else. And that just hasn't really been the case the last several years. New folks come on board. They can't necessarily afford a mobile radio and some of the other equipment, and we have to make do. And we actually, thank goodness, we have some resources. The ARA has a portable VHF repeater with a UHF link, and we've made wonderful use of that. And that fills in some good holes, some difficult places to communicate from. And we'll show that a little bit later. And in addition to that, the last couple of years, we've been looking at, we've always talked about you never want to use a crossband radio in a controlled environment like this, where you have lots of quick traffic that has to be passed. And one of the reasons is that if you use a full crossband, you can be locked out. Now, what do I mean by locked out? So when the net gets busy, and you may have even initiated a call, the repeater may have been in the listening mode, and so it's not transmitting, and you may have initiated the call. But every time that you want to talk back to somebody else through the repeater, you have to wait for the repeater to completely drop. And so it delays everything. And worse, if somebody else keys up the repeater and you're using a full crossband, you will never get back into the repeater again, ever, unless the repeater drops. And so that may be because of people quick keying and the conversation just continuing. If there's some priority traffic going on, you will never get back into the net. And so that's why we stress never use crossband. And if you're going to use what we call transmit boost, coordinate that with whoever is organizing the event, whoever the event coordinator is, because they need to know what frequencies are going to be used and where, because we don't want unintentional interference between 2 or 3 or 4 or more people because somebody wants to run transmit boost. There are occasions when it's a good thing to use, and that's what I want to talk about here. So we were looking at how could we provide handheld coverage on the eastern side of the course. So from 260 Trailhead to Net Control, which is in Mountain Meadows in the center of the picture, and to Sea Canyon. And we were looking at various positions that we could place what we'll call a distributed repeater. And that's where you have two transmit boost setups that are separated by some distance. In this particular case, it's about a mile apart. And that's shown just to the right of Drew here in this location with TX, and a receive boost down in this location right at the edge of the rim. Well, actually, both of these are right on the edge of the rim. And so this spacing gives us enough physical distance that we don't have to have a duplexer, because the stations are actually physically separated so that the two radios don't talk to each other and desense one another. The other thing that you don't need in this case is a controller, a repeater controller, because there's no audio being passed from the receiver to the transmitter. And so how in the world do you make this thing work? So let's take another look here. Here's a different topographic map, tries to make it look like you got some 3D relief. This is actually using Ubiquity's software. Ubiquity makes a bunch of microwave equipment that operates anywhere from as low as, I think, 1.8 gigahertz, I think, to as high as 11 or 12 gigahertz. And they do point-to-point connections. They do sector antennas for wide area microwave links, that sort of thing. But what it gives you is it allows you to look at a cross section between 2 points on a map. And so you can see if there's a hill in between. And then, especially for 2 meters or 70 centimeters, a lot of times you'll get a bounce or you'll get knife edging. And so where microwave may be completely inoperable, 2 meters and 70 centimeters, you might have a shot at having a connection. And so on the left-hand side of the picture is the western half of the course, where we made use of the VHF Portable Repeater and made it such that we fill in all these little gaps. So fish hatchery has been notoriously difficult to get communication out of to Mount Ord, because it actually drops. The point where the portable repeater is actually a little hill, and then you drive further north and you actually lose elevation going down into fish hatchery, probably something on the order of 100 feet or so, maybe a little more. And so you can get in and out of there with a mobile radio and a full-size whip on your vehicle, but a handheld is basically a no-go. And so putting the portable on the little rock knoll that happens to stick out right here in this area, there's a little peninsula of rock there, and it just happens to look straight down into Horton Trailhead and can look across these ridges over to Derrick, which is a hike-in position. And it looks also across these other ridges into Springs, Horton Springs, where the spring comes out of the side of the cliff up here. And that's where Marty lives during this event. And so they can get in now with a handheld. Pretty easy, would you say, Marty? It's reasonable. Handheld easily. So it really takes a lot of strain off the hikers, because they don't have to carry a big battery and a mobile type radio to get back to Ord. It just improves communication. And so that portable repeater, that VHF portable repeater, has a UHF link. And so Mount Ord just happens to have, well, it has a whole bunch of radios, a whole bunch of repeaters, but it happens to have a 440 machine, the standalone, the 444.5, and we temporarily link that to the 147.36. We make it part of the Rim Link constellation for this event. And that gives us good coverage into the fish hatchery area through Mount Ord. On the other side, what we did was, well, we tried to set up this double transmit boost so that people could use 2 meters on their handheld and then boost the signal to the 440 machine on Ord. And so in some cases that worked pretty well. Last year it seemed to work okay. We used different radios, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This year, not so great. We discovered a lot of things, and thanks to the help of Dennis Campbell, he recently took some measurements, and we now know why it didn't work, or we have a very good idea of why it didn't work. Thank you, Dennis. And so we've made a proposal that we would like to, just like we have a VHF repeater today with a UHF link, we want to build, I'll call it a mirror image of that. So we'd like to build a UHF repeater with a VHF link. Now you might think, well, gee, wait a minute. There are no linking frequencies on 2 meters. You got to be at 440. You got to be in the 420 band to have linking. Well, it's not, technically it is linking. However, this is a temporary situation for a particular event. They usually don't last more than 2 days. And the other thing is, we're not going through a link channel. The repeater would actually link into the constellation as a user. So for example, you may be using your handheld on UHF, and that would then get transmitted to the link radio, which is on 2 meters, but we would then choose an appropriate 2 meter repeater frequency that we would transmit into. So 147.36. And so the repeater then, the portable, would act just like any other user. And so if somebody else keyed up the Mount Ord repeater on 147.36, it would be just as if 2 users keyed up at the same time and tried to go into the same repeater. And so for an event where it's controlled by a net control, I think that's reasonable for a short-term event where traffic is under some kind of control, and their net control is listening on multiple frequencies so that they can hear their own traffic and hear when people are doubling, and make appropriate calls and direct traffic. So I think it works pretty well. Now, what did we discover with this distributed repeater and different radios? So I tried to draw out the picture of what's happening and all the various radios that are involved. And so on the far right, we have Joe Ham out here with his handheld radio, and we asked them to program it as though it was a 2 meter traditional offset repeater. So we tell them, okay, program your receive for 45.23, do minus offset 600 kilohertz, and put a transmit PL of 162.2, which for the ARA repeaters, 2 meters, I think all of them are 162.2. And so to a user, that's just like any other repeater. Just set it up, program it in, and you're ready to go. So to them, nothing changes. It just looks like another repeater. But what happens to that signal is very different, where it goes and how it gets there. And so we're using 2 transmit boost setups, and they're roughly a mile apart in this particular case. On the what I'll call the traditional transmit boost, where you're using your handheld and you're going into your transmit boost station to boost your signal up to the repeater. And so the signal goes into the receiver of the dual band radio. It picks that up and then transfers it over to the UHF side that you've already set up the frequency for the repeater, and it transmits over to Mount Ord. And then that radio just happens to be linked to the other repeater on Mount Ord, so it comes out on this frequency too. And so everybody's listening to one of these two, and everybody in the constellation can hear it. And on the way back, when this person unkeys, in order for them to hear the traffic, that the response, the signals come from one of the two repeaters. In this case, I'm just showing the 440 side. The signal comes out of its transmitter. It's picked up by a transmit boost of the repeater, transferred across from 70 centimeters to 2 meters, and it retransmits for the person with the handheld. And so in this example, you don't have a repeater controller and you don't have a duplexer, but you've got to get separation between those two so that they don't interfere with one another. Well, what did we discover? So in previous years, Leonard, who's on the call, he has a Kenwood, a TMV 71, and it worked fantastic. He was our transmit boost, so this top block, and that worked really well. And on the receive side, we used an ICOM IC 2730, and this side worked great also. Now, why do I have an X through the ICOM over here? Well, what we discovered was if you don't have any PLs set, so the signal coming from the repeater down to the transmit boost for that, we didn't need a PL because the repeater doesn't transmit a PL. And we said, okay, we're only going to listen to the output of the repeater, so there shouldn't be anything else on that frequency. So we'll take anything that keys up and opens the radio, and we'll send it across to 2 meters. And we're not going to transmit a tone there either, because most of the repeaters don't transmit a tone. And so you don't have a tone on your handheld. You only have a transmit tone. And so this side worked just fine. Well, what we discovered was that this year on this side, Leonard couldn't join us this year. And so we didn't have access to a Kenwood radio, but we had access to another ICOM 2730. And so we thought, oh, well, let's just use that for the other half. Well, what happened was it was unexpected, and it took a lot of thought. And thank you to Dennis and Brian and a few others for figuring out what in the world was happening here. What we discovered was that this receiver, or transmitter rather, when it's in receive mode, you have to hide it such that a signal coming from, say, another user that may have access either with a handheld or a mobile radio that can directly get into the Mount Ord UHF repeater, you don't want that triggering this receiver and going backwards through this transmit boost and coming out on the 2 meter side where nobody's listening. And so we thought, okay, we can hide that with a different receive PL, and that should take care of it. So anything that comes in during receive, it's not going to have the right PL, and we've broken this chain. Well, that piece worked. However, what we discovered is that on an ICOM, for some reason, and Dennis can go into more detail on this perhaps later, what was discovered is that the PL that is generated over here, that is coming in from this handheld, it's not screened out. So it's not filtered off. Well, the UHF? No. When from the handheld, we were having trouble getting into the repeater. So this PL, this 162.2 that's coming in, is not being stripped off. And so some portion of that signal is passing through to the transmit side. And so now you have a mix between some amplitude of a 162.2 plus the 100 hertz that we want to transmit for the 440 to get into this repeater. And so that caused all kinds of havoc because we were transmitting and we could see it on the boost radio. It was receiving the signal, it was transmitting, but we were not getting into the repeater because it had a mixed PL tone. And so it drove us up the wall for quite a while. In fact, basically the whole event. But we made do, and people got by with communicating. But later we figured out, or Dennis and Brian and so forth, they figured out what was going on. And so it was interesting. Dennis started digging into what does this radio look like and what kind of filtering does it have that's different on the Kenwood. And I guess it turned out that, you know, they don't do a very good job of stripping off the PL tone, and it gets passed. And so it creates this nasty little mix. Even when you're trying to do something right, it doesn't always work out. You know, we were trying to use just transmit boost, trying to prevent reverse communication through it, and the hardware let us down. But we've learned something. We've learned what was going on, I believe, and maybe there's a way to get around it. You know, we've talked about, well, if you made the received PL on this side 100 hertz, then it's 100 mixing with 100. Yes, there's some products there, but maybe that would take care of it, because now you at least have 100 hertz and you've got some other junk with it, but maybe that will be just fine and still key this repeater to come up with the proper tone. Some other work that Alvin had done. Alvin's an RF engineer at a local company, and he's done quite a bit of testing with handhelds and so forth. And he did some testing while we were out there at the event and discovered that if you used, all of this is on wideband FM, and he discovered that, well, if you use the narrow FM, you apparently can attenuate the PL tone just enough that it doesn't have as strong a mix, and so you can actually still get in. And so you can still go through the transmit boost and get to the mount order repeater, the UHF side, and it seemed to work. But that's radio dependent. And so some handhelds it worked, other handhelds it did not work. So it was a toss-up whether or not your particular radio was going to do the job or not. So some of the this is one of the pages out of the 2730 manual, and we thought, well, maybe we can, on the receive side, so we prevent it from going backwards, instead of using tone on the transmit and tone squelch on the receive, maybe we could do tone on the transmit and DTC, so the digital coded squelch on the receive side, because nobody's going to be transmitting that either. But it still doesn't prevent the double tone mix, the 162.2 with the 100. So it's still not really a good solution. A better solution would be to actually have a repeater. So to actually have a set of cans for a duplexer. Make it a mirror image. So have a UHF repeater with a VHF link, and place that, say, at Drew, which is the last checkpoint before you jump over the edge of the rim and come down into Sea Canyon, and then back to the finish line, which is where net control was located at Mountain Meadows. And so that would allow us to link into Mount Ord from the RimLink side, from the 147.36, and use the VHF portable with the UHF link to connect into Mount Ord through the 444.5. And of course, those two radios are they're co-located on the mountain, and they talk through the repeater controller through the audio link, and make the entire loop connect from one location to the other. There may be another place to put the UHF portable repeater. Another potential site is at the tip of Promontory Butte. It also looks into most of the canyons to the east, down into Sea Canyon, the net control area at the northern side of Christopher Creek, even out here to this area where the 260 trailhead is, and they run up on top of the rim out to the right, where Military Sinkhole is. But in any event, we're in the process of discussing how to build this guy and what equipment to use, and so we're going to try and get that worked out, hopefully someday soon. And yeah. On the Kenwood? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Brian made a comment that why wouldn't we have the same problem with the repeater? Well, the reason is that in the repeater, not only do you have the radios that can filter out the PL tone, but the controller also has its own filtering to ensure you strip out the PL tones, which are down in that very low part of the audio portion, below 300 hertz, and so it totally eliminates them and gets rid of the problem that we experienced.
Yeah, can I throw something in here?
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, I did some testing, and the PL tone is dropped about 5% in going through that radio into the receiver and then coming back out the other transmitter. So if you turned on a 100 hertz transmit PL and no receive PL, or a 100 hertz receive PL and no transmit PL, the 100 hertz would have gone straight through and right to the Mount Ord machine, and it would have worked fine. That's one PL source, not two.
Yeah.
If you put them both on 100 hertz, they combine, they're at the same frequency. The difference in frequency is small enough that you don't get a rolling mix on them, or at least not very fast. But they could be any random phase when you key up, and therefore they might add up to twice the voltage, which would give you 1200 hertz deviation instead of 600. They might add up to a very low voltage, which gives you about 50 to 100 hertz or 200 hertz of deviation, which might not trip the repeater. Or if you've got a hot radio in your hand that has a little bit excessive PL deviation, they might cancel out completely and you send no PL tone on downstream sometimes, but it's totally random.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, the reason we don't run into this other places is because in our controllers, the radios, I've looked at several of the PL chips, and most of them are set to include a low pass filter. So it takes the PL stuff off and doesn't spit it through the rest of the audio system on the receive. But on all of the ARA sites, we have a separate board which includes a high pass filter going each direction for, well, one high pass filter for each machine. So the receive audio is fed to the PL decoder, and it is also the PL frequencies, the subaudibles from 300 hertz on down, are stripped totally off, and what's left is fed into the controller to be routed to any other radios that are linked to it. So the PLs never get distributed through the whole machine. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with one radio that allows you to program it into crossband mode, it may or may not have that low pass filter built into it, and the 2730 does not have the low pass function built into it, so it passes the entire audio spectrum from the receive straight through to the transmitter, and that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that explanation, Dennis. It creates havoc.
It would be interesting to see if the Yaesu, like the F350 and newer, have the same issue, or if they behave more like the Kenwood, if it's just an ICOM issue. Because
Yeah.
you don't get the portable repeater, I know like Alvin's also got an FT350 he could have put up.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we've looked at the FT350 or the FT400 or the 500 to see if it has the same kind of issue.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take a look at them. Just
Yeah.
bring me a programming manual and I'll check them out.
But hey, James.
Yeah.
So one other note on this, since I was involved with Dennis and James and Gene, this is a lot of work to put up. I mean, we went up on Friday and I think we probably had 4 hours in trying to put up that distributed link. Some of that was because we experienced some of the issues early on, but we couldn't figure out why we were getting them. One of Dennis's radios seemed to work fine and the other one didn't. And we did a lot of on the phone, calls back and forth and a lot of troubleshooting. But even if you get rid of all that and it just works out of the box, you're going and you're setting, 2 antennas in trees and, wheeling out the equipment and getting it all set up to play is a significant amount of work. And so the portable repeater essentially is going to cut that in half. And I think that that's something that should be noted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And here in the room, Marty mentioned the same thing, that the whole reason that we, after this incident, that we proposed a UHF portable repeater with a VHF link was to fix this exact problem. And because we know, like Dennis talked about, the controllers have filtering in them. And well, the radios that we happen to use, the CDM, Motorola CDM radios, they have filtering that's better than perhaps standard issue ham equipment. And so the two of those together, it's definitely going to strip off all the PL tones and so forth at the bottom end. And it's a much better solution, much more elegant solution to the problem.
Figuring it out at 3 a.m. when you're firing up the control is really not a pleasant time either.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And really, no matter which radios we use, if we have a separate radio for VHF and a separate radio for UHF, the controller has to tie that audio path through, which means we have our hands on it at some point in the controller. We can put our own high pass filters in there to make darn sure that the PL tones don't get transmitted or don't get crossed from the receiver back into the transmitter.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Rick, last year, I don't remember this kind of problem when I was doing one leg of that with the V71.
That's right.
I don't believe it happened either, Leonard, and we've kind of concluded the V71 has more filtering than the ICOM did. And, the James talked about it early on, but the boost for the receive side coming down from the mountaintop and transmitting back into net control and the event people, that one doesn't have any PLs on it. And so we didn't know we had the issue because we weren't putting any PLs on that. We didn't need them. So that's where the difference came, and it was brutal to troubleshoot when you're on a time crunch.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering though, if we're getting into the problem because we're running simplex, like we have a transmit boost setup that we show up on the Anmar site, where the one side, the boost or for your transmit boost radio, we on the side that pointing towards the Metro link or the Rim link, we put reverse frequencies on it, so it can't receive that link coming back in. So I'm wondering if it's more the fact that we're using a simplex rather than following that transmit boost configuration we documented on the Anmar site.
Well, I think the one that's on the Anmar, and I could be wrong, James, you can jump in, but I think that one was a transmit out of band.
That's what it's set up to do. Yes,
the ICOM doesn't play
the frequency so that it'll transmit, so that it tries to transmit out of band, so it can't transmit.
Right. The ICOM, we tried it, and the ICOM refuses to transmit in band if the receive is out of band.
Yeah, but that's not the problem here.
Yeah. So
hiding the unused receivers is not an issue.
yeah.
The issue is that the receiver that you are using, if you have a PL decode on it and you have a PL on your transmit frequency, in order to talk properly to Mount Ord, you're hosed, because those two PL tones are going to be right on top of each other, and they're going to add in a very linear fashion, and the resulting waveform just confuses the heck out of the decoder on Mount Ord.
Yeah, this guy. So you're right, Leonard. The hiding the receiver here, that was pretty easy, and that worked. We changed the receive PL. It stopped the audio from coming back and going backwards. The problem was this, like Dennis just said, this PL tone was not being stripped, and it was transmitted through to the other side and mixing with this transmit PL, and then this guy couldn't decode it. And so we never made it there. Yeah, you end up with 4 different subaudible tones. And the one you want is not good enough. Doesn't have sufficient amplitude to key the mountaintop repeater.
You got to get more people with Kenwoods.
Yeah, exactly. We need Kenwoods.
They'd sell them again. That would be great.
Yeah, and Noel, of course, now we can't get a V71, but I heard rumor that from the folks that went to Dayton that there's a new Kenwood coming out. What do they call it? The D750 or something? Yeah. Oh, is it 12? Somebody said $1,200 is the expected price. Wow. But yeah, they really like it. It's supposed to have 2 meters, 220, and 440. So a tri-band radio. But gosh, that's a pretty penny.
Got D-Star also?
So
I would assume it has D-Star. I don't know that it does, but I assume it does.
So a question for Dennis. Dennis, if we were to then publish a frequency, 145.23 with the offset, the minus offset on it, and then publish the transmit PL at 100, do you think that would work for us?
Only if you turned off the transmit PL on the UHF radio side.
Turn this off.
You can only have one. If they mix together,
that screws it up too.
It still screws it up. You will get random dropouts where it just won't work at all, and you'll wonder why it still doesn't work.
Okay.
Because if the two signals are 180 degrees out of phase, they will cancel each other out perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. That, of course, that makes sense. So which would you prefer? Would you rather have us transmit it or transmit it on the other end at the handheld?
In general, well, part of the question is, for the receiver on 2 meters, how much spurious crap is likely to trip it and kerchunk it? And do you have enough signal strength from the various locations that you could tighten the squelch just a little bit to take care of that? And then you wouldn't need a receive PL on the 2-meter receiver. And then you
Yeah,
wouldn't have a problem.
in this event, I think we could probably tighten the squelch up and get away with it, but we'd still have some per chunks. I'm sure the noise on the system.
What about turning the transmit PL off on the UHF side and just pass it through the PL from the VHF side?
And that would be an option too.
Yeah.
Yes, that would work very successfully. The PL would be within 5% of the same signal level, and it would work just fine. And I played with that right here. I have the physical IC 2730 sitting right here beside me, and I've spent all day playing with it with the station monitor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and
for,
thanks
for tracking this down.
Yeah, the one thing I have to watch, Rick, is when you're writing it up, you're going to have to, because on my Kenwood, if you don't turn on that transmit PL, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, exactly. But Gene and I both built boxes that we can put out in the woods very conveniently to do this kind of thing, and knowing that we need to, not use the repeater PL as part of the boost, is something that's doable for us, and we can still use the radios to get the job done.
Yeah, and whether the PL tones get filtered off.
So I think
in the receive path, and where they get filtered off in the receive path is an engineering decision that is made by the guys that design the radio.
Yeah.
And it's totally up to them. They may have a separate PL chip for each side of the radio, if they're smart, if they're going to run dual receive like that. And they could include the low pass filtering in the audio or the high pass filtering in the audio to take that PL off and not let it propagate anywhere. And if you get a radio that's built that way, you're in business. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But if they don't filter that audio out, they assume it's not going anywhere. And the crossband was kind of a last minute add in. I noticed the controls for the 2730 are not listed in the main manual. You have to download an addendum to the manual to figure out how to get it into crossband mode. And it's a separate extension to the menus that pops up that allows you to do that, which means they weren't even thinking of that when they built the original radio. They added it in as a last minute, oh, gee, we ought to do this. It'll work so nice. And there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
You had the same issue where they didn't document it and you had to go out and somebody figured out how to kick it into there too.
Yeah, that's happened with some radios in the past also.
Yeah, so I think the biggest lesson that we learned is that you have to be careful in how you implement these things. And the real solution is build a UHF portable where you have definite control of the signals that are coming in and the signals that are going out. And like Rick mentioned, and I think a few others, it simplifies the implementation because you're not going to two separate sites, setting up two completely separate stations, and then getting them to work together. You have one system, one location, set it all up, turn it on, and if everything's programmed correctly, right frequencies, right PLs, and so forth, it just works. Just like the VHF portable.
And James, not only did we do it twice on the rim, but then we also did essentially half of that again just to deploy the VHF portable repeater. So we had effectively 3 teams out there to set up repeaters or pieces of repeaters, if you will, on Friday afternoon. And it took a good period of time to do it, and a lot of effort and a lot of running back and forth on the rim road because we were having those issues and we weren't sure what was causing them.
Yeah.
And so it's a big labor drain,
Yeah. And so here in the room, Brian mentioned, the portable repeaters are easy to set up. I mean, I've done it several times. Brian's done it several you're bringing everything with you in your vehicle, and you plug it all together, you turn it on, you set up the right channels, and boom, you're on the air. It's just that quick. Half an hour and you can have the whole thing up and running. An hour max. And you've got it all hooked up and running, and everybody can talk to everybody. Yeah, it takes longer Brian says it takes longer to use the air cannon to launch the beanbag over the tree so you can pull the antenna up in the air than it does to hook up the equipment.
The other thing that takes longer is if you get confused about which way is north and you're using a beam antenna to connect to Mount Ord, it can take a few minutes to figure out, oh, we're 90 degrees off. If we turn the beam over here, then it talks just fine, and then you're done. But you can waste 20, 30 minutes worrying about that too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or the wrong beam in the trailer.
One more note about the UHF Portable. The VHF Portable, the cans require a certain amount of space. And I know, James, you can put it in your Expedition, but it takes up a lot of room in your Expedition when you do that.
It does. It's big.
It's big. And so it's actually better if you can to put it in the trailer. And there's sometimes where the trailer is not the optimum because of the road. But, assuming that you're taking it somewhere, having it in the trailer makes sense. The UHF, portable, when it's done, on the other hand, probably will be, a third of the size of the combined size of the cans and the repeater on the VHF,
right? Because
of the physics. And so that's something that, not only can we use it on an event like this, but if you had, cruddy coverage, if you will, down in the valley somewhere where you just didn't really like your repeater options, you could deploy it out there on something that had a relatively small course, and it would work just fine. So, it's something you could put in a vehicle and put up it, you could put up a mast that's up 20 feet with it or something like that, and it would work just great. So there's a lot of possibilities for it. It's not just for the Zane Grey or the Monster. I think we'll use it on the Monster as well if we get it done. But it is a piece of equipment that's going to add a lot of capacity to doing the events.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that the package will be significantly smaller. Yeah, Brian's saying 9 inches versus 30 inches for the for the package.
Yeah.
And the duplexer will fit inside the package. So versus a totally separate box that's about 3 or 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide.
And weighs about 70 pounds.
Yeah, weighs about 70 pounds. And you have to tie it down such that it stands up vertical in your vehicle, because you don't want to lay it sideways, and it'll detune the cans depending on how many bumps and how hard you hit it. So yeah, it's a lot of precautions of how you transport and get it there, but it works great. You treat it right and hook it up, and it works fantastic. So we'd like to do the same thing on the UHF side and make a smaller package and give us a lot of flexibility, and offering new hams an opportunity to participate where they may not be quite ready for a full-blown mobile rig setup. It gives them that opportunity anyway. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or concerns?
Can I throw a last minute comment out here?
Yeah.
Well, Dennis kind of touched on it very briefly at the beginning, but the Monster's coming up, and if you're not signed up for it and you plan to participate, please do sign up, and appreciate all the help you can give us, because it's a long event. It's 38 hours total, and there's going to be need for some posts that are going to have shifts. So if you're available to work the Monster, please consider it. We'd love to have you. Most of the assignments are going to be, straightforward, just recording numbers and calling them in. So sign up if you're available.
Yeah. Nice advertisement. Well, with that, if there's no additional questions or comments, thank you everybody for coming tonight. And we'll look for you next month in June. I don't have a victim yet for presenting next month. Maybe I'll find somebody looking around the room. But that meeting will be just before field day. And so I'm sure lots of folks are going out to field day. I know the Scottsdale Club is going out to up where Rick is right now near Clint's Well. And I know that Superstition is also going out just west of Clint's Well, I believe. Lots of other clubs go out and participate. Go out with your favorite club and get on HF. Even if you're a technician, get out there and get on, because somebody will have an extra class license. They'll be the control operator, and get on HF and chase and have some fun. And with that, I look forward to seeing everybody in June. Thanks for coming. Wow. Slow motion clapping. Yes.